Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're getting into something pretty common in tech discussions right now. This whole idea of moving from a big Rails application, a monolith, over to microservices.
Right. Lots of teams are talking about.
Exactly. So whether you're maybe debating this for your own team or you're just curious what all the fuss is about, well, we're going to explore it.
Yeah, so just quickly, that Rails monolith, that's basically your entire app in one code base, right? All Rails. Think of it like one big kitchen. Everything's there.
And microservices.
That's breaking it down. Like having your oven, your fridge, your blender, all as separate things that need to talk to each other.
Okay, so our mission today is really to get past the buzzwords and look at what you really need to consider if you're thinking about this shift. We're diving into a piece from Thoughtbot, came out May 9th, 2025.
Ah, yeah, the one called Moving from a Rails Monolith to Microservices. Things to consider before you regret it. Good title.
It is.
Yeah.
And Thoughtbot sees a lot of this stuff as consultants, so they have a practical viewpoint.
And they start with this great analogy, don't they? Trading a bike for a unicycle and a skateboard.
Yes, which immediately tells you it's not going to be straightforward. Both get you there, but, well, very different experience.
Totally different skills needed.
Okay, so why does a team even start thinking about this? What are those first, rumblings you hear?
Well, often it starts because the monolith feels like it's getting big, maybe a bit clumsy.
Like stepping on toes.
Yeah, exactly. Teams feel like they're bumping into each other's code. Deployments become these huge all-or-nothing events. Everything has to go at once.
Stressful.
Very. And maybe the lines between different parts of the app aren't so clear anymore. Then you get the outside stuff. Someone reads an article, goes to a conference talk.
Sees that Spotify diagram.
Right, that famous Spotify org chart showing all the independent teams. And you start thinking, maybe we should do that.
Which brings us to the key question for you listening. Is this move actually a step forward for your situation? Or is it just sideways? Or maybe even backwards, considering the effort?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the Thoughtbot article, well, it argues pretty strongly that starting with a monolith, and often staying with it, is actually the smarter move for a lot of teams.
Because microservices add complexity.
A lot of complexity. Often complexity you just don't need, especially early on.
They mentioned Martin Fowler's point too, right? About the monolith being the fastest way to actually learn your domain.
Exactly. You figure out what your software needs to do by building it together first. It connects to that idea from fundamentals of software architecture too.
Richard and Ford?
Yeah. They always stress making choices based on your system's needs, not just following the trend. It's about the trade-offs.
And Rails itself, it's kind of built for monoliths, wouldn't you say? It's opinionated.
Totally. Convention over configuration, batteries included.
All that good stuff.
It really optimizes for speed, for keeping related code together, cohesion, and, simplicity, especially vital for small teams moving fast.
But what about the argument that monoliths just get slow? That they can't scale?
The article pushes back on that. It argues that, look, performance problems in Rails apps usually aren't because it's a monolith.
What are they then?
It's more likely things like optimizing too early, missing database indexes, a classic one, or just overly complicated code abstractions inside the monolith itself. Not the architecture, but the implementation.
So the advice for you listening is, if you're thinking microservices just for speed, pause. Ask yourself, is the app size the real problem? Or are we maybe not using Rails or our database as effectively as we could be?
Precisely. Because the jump to microservices, it's not just splitting code. It's a whole different world of complexity.
How so? The article gives an example, like a code change.
Yeah, in a monolith, maybe you make a change, you look at the git diff, it's all there. One commit, probably,
Yep.
in microservices. That same logical change might mean touching 3 different services. Coordinating those updates, making sure they deploy together or in the right order.
Right, especially if the services are too small, like they can't do much on their own.
Exactly. If they're too granular and always need to call each other to get anything done, you've just added network latency and operational pain without getting the main benefit, which is independence.
And that complexity ripples out, right? Testing must get way harder.
Oh, yeah. Suddenly you need to maybe run 3 or 4 services just to test one user journey. Deployments aren't just Git push, they're orchestrated events.
Even just coding on your laptop.
Setting up your local dev environment can become a whole project in itself, making sure all the right services are running and talking to each other.
So the key point is, if they aren't truly independent,
You get all the downsides, the network calls, the operational burden, without the upside of being able to deploy and scale parts independently.
They have that phrase about moving from method calls to network calls.
Yeah, introducing new surfaces for failure. Every time one service calls another over the network, that's a place where things can break. Network glitch, services down, responses slow.
Ugh. So you're chasing bugs across different systems?
Yep. Trying to figure out where an error started. Keeping data formats, the schemas in sync between services, and that observability spaghetti they mentioned.
What's that?
Just trying to make sense of logs and metrics coming from 5 different places at once to understand a single request flow. It can get really tangled.
So the message is pretty clear. Don't take on all that cost unless you have a really good reason.
A specific, urgent reason that outweighs all that extra work.
But to be fair, the article does say sometimes there are good reasons, right? It's not a blanket never do it.
No, absolutely not. Sometimes the architecture does need to evolve. For instance, maybe one part of your app has wildly different needs than another.
Like performance needs.
And security.
Or security.
Exactly. Or maybe you need really strong fault isolation. If the, say, reporting service fails, you absolutely cannot let it bring down the core ordering system.
Okay, that makes sense.
Or maybe different parts just need to be updated on totally different schedules. One part changes daily, another changes twice a year. Microservices can help there.
Different tech stacks, too. Maybe one part is perfect for Elixir or Go.
That can be a driver. Or team size, if your team gets huge, one giant code base can become a bottleneck to productivity. And sometimes regulations might even push you towards clearer service boundaries.
And the classic reason scaling.
Yeah, genuine scaling needs for just one part of the system. If your authentication service gets slammed but the rest is fine, scaling just that part makes sense.
But the caveat is always,
The benefits have to outweigh the costs. That increased complexity, the operational overhead, the slower development for certain kinds of changes, it has to be worth it.
okay, so let's say a team weighs it all up and decides, yes, we need to do this. What are the big things to watch out for? How do you avoid the pitfalls?
Number one, according to the article, clear boundaries. And crucially, split by business domain, not technical layers.
Meaning?
Think about the actual business capabilities like product search, billing, notifications. Don't just make a user model service or a database access service. That's a technical split.
Got it. They mentioned domain-driven design, DDD.
Yeah, it's a good way to think about identifying those core business domains and their boundaries.
Because you don't want to end up with those tiny Rails apps talking to the same Postgres they mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the worst of both worlds. You get the distributed complexity, but still have the tight coupling through the shared database.
What else? They mentioned treating the monolith.
As the first service, don't just start hacking pieces off randomly. Refactor the monolith first. Define clear APIs or interfaces on it so new services can talk to it cleanly.
Otherwise, you risk creating that distributed monolith.
Right, where you have separate services, but they're all tangled up with hidden dependencies, maybe calling each other's databases directly, no clear contracts. That can be even worse to manage than the original monolith.
And infrastructure seems key. You can't just wing it.
Oh, absolutely not. You need mature infrastructure. Containerization, like Docker. Solid CI/CD pipelines are non-negotiable for automating builds and deploys across services.
Service discovery. Logging.
Yep. How do services find each other? How do you track requests across them? Centralized logging, tracing, monitoring, maybe an API gateway? These aren't nice to haves, they're essential table stakes.
And that implies
A strong DevOps culture. Or, a dedicated platform or SRE team. If you don't have that, you're basically signing up to build it alongside your microservices.
Okay, that's a lot to think about if you do go down that road. But the article also offers alternatives, right? For teams feeling the pain, but maybe not ready for the full microservices leap.
Yes, and these are really important. First up, modular monoliths.
So still one code base.
Still one code base, one deployment usually. But you break it down internally into well-defined modules, maybe using Rails engines, or just strict namespaces and code organization.
With enforced boundaries.
That's the key. You enforce boundaries at the code level, preventing modules from reaching into each other's internals unexpectedly. It sets you up for maybe splitting later, but gives you benefits now. Think like internal walls within your big application building.
They mention patterns like service objects, too.
Right. Using patterns like service objects or interactors within Rails to encapsulate specific business processes cleanly. Isolating responsibilities without needing separate deployments or network calls.
And that practical tip about extracting read-only parts first.
Yeah, I like that one. Maybe pull out an API just for reporting or public data. It's often lower risk because it doesn't handle writes or core transactions. It's a good way to dip your toes into running a separate service, managing its deployment, monitoring it without betting the farm.
It feels like this circles back to the idea that monoliths aren't just for, MVPs or tiny startups.
Definitely not. The article makes a strong case that a well-maintained monolith can be the best choice long-term if you prioritize things like maintainability, quick iteration, developer happiness.
Which are kind of Rails sweet spots anyway.
Exactly. Now, sure, a messy monolith can become a ball of mud. Everyone acknowledges that.
But the answer isn't always blow it up and make microservices.
Right. The answer might be clean up your monolith. Rails gives you tools for that: modules, concerns, service objects, better testing. Don't throw away the advantages of Rails coherence just because microservices are trendy.
So the final word of caution for those, do make the jump.
Go in with your eyes open, understand the complexity you're taking on, and maybe, just maybe, build some escape hatches. Think about how you might reverse the decision or merge services back together if it doesn't pan out. It's a big commitment.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive,
Yeah.
that move from a Rails monolith to microservices, it's a major decision. Huge trade-offs.
Yeah, you really need to look hard at your specific needs, what your team can handle, and the real complexities involved. It's not just a technical upgrade, it changes how you build and operate software.
And there's no single best answer, is there? It's all about context. Your project, your goals, your team.
Absolutely. What works for Netflix or Spotify might be totally wrong for you.
So on that note, here's something to chew on. Thinking about that operational overhead and the need for clear boundaries, what parts of your current system, even inside the monolith, might benefit most from clear separation, more explicit interfaces? Where could you maybe build some of those internal walls first?
Good question to ponder.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.